Hi, good morning and afternoon, everyone, depending on your time zone. First, I want to again check that my audio is at a good level for everyone. If you could do a quick Y on chat if you're hearing me okay. Okay, looks like we're good there. Again, thanks for coming and having me here. The Science Circle was gracious enough to have me present again for the second time. They remain one of the I think, strongest and most active forces for education in virtual worlds at this time, even though some articles would speak otherwise to the role of education in virtual worlds as of recent, which is part of the reason why I'm presenting today. So the topic is a vision for education in virtual worlds. Slide changes will be old-fashioned. I'll be changing texture, so please give it a second for the texture to res as I go along. And I will keep an eye on the chat and answer questions as we move forward as much as I can. If I get on a topic, I might miss a question. If I do, I apologize. So let me get started. This presentation will sound like a pitch because I'm hoping it will be, and it has in the past. I actually was able to share this with IBM, someone in their entrepreneurship division that was looking for big ideas. Unfortunately, it's a really big idea, so it didn't take off yet. I have to find the right audience for it, the right partners for it. But it is that. You'll notice that I'm trying to speak to the advantages of it and why, in my opinion, it is a place where we should be diverting our efforts to be able to make some real change in education. It is a roadmap, so I'm going to be talking about how to go about implementing the change, and it's not all at once. So it's not simply a description of a big idea. It is how we get there, and that is extremely important to note, since a lot of the efforts in many of our fields by many of our friends and colleagues have stalled despite their obvious prowess and data to show their ability to make changes in the classroom using virtual worlds or other technology. They're not catching on. And this is the reason for this. Hmm. Well, that's not resing. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Oh, maybe not resing for me. Okay. Oh, also, before I forget, and in case things go south, I always like to have a backup plan. I'm about to post on in chat the link for the presentation, so you can just have it for personal use later, or if you want to follow on your own browser. So that link I just shared should open up the same presentation in a browser, set it to public. So you can follow along there if you prefer. Okay, so why this presentation? Those that know me here in Second Life know that I've been trying to innovate and work with virtual worlds and technology for going on 8 years now, but more like around 10 years, but this time. Recently, I was given the honor and opportunity to present for the UNC Chapel Hill MA program in Educational Innovation, Technology, and Entrepreneurship. And this presentation was a summary of all the major efforts I've done over the last 8 years, and they've been various different angles at trying to tackle the problem. Now, many of my colleagues focus on different topics. I know folks that do nothing but virtual worlds and education within, like RAN. Other folks gamification. Other folks different aspects of both. And then they do research and they hammer that one field in their career, and they have strong data to show what they do. That's not my focus. My focus has always been the same, and that is figuring out what the next educational paradigm looks like. Figuring out which parts of the different technologies, which practices, which pedagogy forms that, in as far as all the research and work shows. Every different effort has things that work and things that don't work, and that's what I've been focusing on. I'm trying to bring those together. And that's why I've tried so many methods in my own classroom. And when I go to conferences, I try to hear about the different technologies because I'm not focusing on any one. I'm trying to pick up the things that work and how they all fit together to bring about hopefully change, which has been the difficult component. Some of these things that I've been using has been anecdotes. Lots of teachers telling me how things go in the classroom at conferences. Um, the data, there's a lot of people sometimes say, well, where's the data? Well, by now we actually have a lot of really strong data to show how both the gamification and virtual worlds affect the learner's experience, the stickiness of the material, um, how how it reflects on their practices. So in other words, the immersion then reflects on how they spend their time, and they spend more of their time with instruction because instruction has an aspect that is more immersive and engages the user more. And then there's different volumes now that do nothing but detail how these research efforts have increased the learning in the classroom. So that's no longer an excuse from administration or others as to why not to adopt it. We can show how it affects the education in a positive manner to a significant degree. And then the other thing I've noted over the last 8 years was the frustration. The most recent conference I went to was a serious play conference this past summer, where I got to meet some very, very interesting people. Um, so Steve Isaacs, we have Peggy Sheehy, and many other of what we call ourselves the tribe. And there's tribe here also, I'm sure. But these individuals, all brilliant, all working in different fields in virtual worlds like Minecraft or gamification, have been doing it for a long time, longer than I have. But the common theme, as I engaged them in conversation about this field that we're all passionate about, was frustration at how it's not catching on. And I know that frustration myself. So in my classroom, the administration was luckily, it's a key part, very supportive of my efforts in using different innovative tools in the classroom. Their take on it was, I do this extra work, other teachers will catch on. And that wasn't the case. And if you've done this yourself in your own fields, you'll note that ideas may be used if teachers choose to or are forced to for a year or two, but they don't prolong. They don't stay for a long time. And certainly, if a teacher doesn't have any initiative to use an idea, despite how good it seems, they don't adopt it. In my own experience, it was quite the opposite. There was animosity from other teachers from the innovation in my classroom. There was really no curiosity about how to use it, more of, you're showing us off kind of attitude. So it was quickly apparent that if my goal was to permeate change, doing it from my own classroom wasn't accomplishing it, which is part of the reason why I left. It was a frustration with how all my efforts were in the end a microcosm. And in my opinion, as you'll see as I describe this idea, the change has to have equity. It has to permeate throughout schools. It can't be something that's only available to one district or one classroom, certainly. Or it has to have special equipment, which we can only get into schools that have the money or have a grant. The idea has to be available to as many as possible to be able to affect the greater change that we're looking for in the educational paradigm. And that's what I'm looking to do. Okay, let's go for the next slide, we hope. Okay, so this is what I call the big idea. So the big idea has been something I've been working on for quite some time. Oh, thanks, Beth. I like the duct tape too. I thought it was cute. I'm using a template. I won't take credit for the duct tape. And then this is just my vision, and I have my disclaimer right at the corner. I'm certainly not advocating that if we don't do it this way, we can't affect change as a great part to the educational paradigm. I'm simply saying that, in my opinion, based on my own experience as well as experience of others that I've spoken with, this is what it looks like to bring about the change. These are the parts that we need to bring together and collaborate on to be able to finally dethrone this industrial age educational paradigm that has taken such a hold in education here in this country and many other countries that seem to stick with it, with some exceptions. There are some countries that are very, very innovative. In particular, I'm thinking about Northern Europe, where there's change at a country level of how they do education, but still there's a lot of things that they could improve with as well. So it's applicable as a whole to how we do education as a people, not particular to a country or a continent. It's more of the methodology that seems to permeate most institutions. Okay, so what are the pieces that bring this together? Well, the first thing that I must realize is that right now, educators and administration have just a glum, a huge field of discrete apps and games and tools that are thrown at them every day. It's overwhelming, and it's no fault of theirs. It's just that uh, there are many individuals and many levels, big government, private industry, just concerned citizens that realize we need to change the way we do education, and either through their own volition and wanting to bring about change, or to make money, because this is a very lucrative business right now, ed tech. They put out all kinds of tools. So the field is, and as you probably know if you are in the field, saturated. And there's more things coming out. Discrete tools, some do this, some do that. Um, so the first thing we need to do is to begin develop the one-stop shop. We need to ease the process by promote adoption by creating a common platform. That's where this idea starts. And in my opinion, that platform is a virtual world. Okay, so the virtual world for this big idea is the tapestry on which all the other solutions come, where they are created, where they're realized. Okay, so what does this tapestry look like? What does this virtual world look like? And this answers, or this speaks to Day's poll on using the Oculus Rift. It uses the WebVR tool that recently has become more prevalent through A-Frame and other technologies. That means that the virtual world environment runs on a browser. This in turn means that it will run on a PC, on iOS, and most importantly, on mobile devices. This technology is already being employed. There's no client, right? There's no download. ScienceSpace and Adorable, Adorable is actually education specific, and Decentraland are three examples of virtual world providers that run in a browser. They will open up right on Chrome and you can run around. Are there restrictions on the complexity? Yes, but they're not unsurmountable problems. Once you have something that will run on a mobile device, now you can begin to use the Google Cardboard, or more excitedly, in my opinion, the standalone devices that are coming out this quarter and next quarter, which talks about a price point of maybe $200 for a device that you just have to plug in to power up, to charge, and then put on. No PC required. This means that it is a lot easier to get it in the hands of students. Not just some students or some schools, or a few students within a school that have access to the desktops. I'm talking about all students. I'm talking about when you go one-to-one at a school, At schools that I've worked at, sometimes they get laptops that cost $1,000. A $200 device is within the range of most schools to purchase for most of their students. For that reason, to me, this is the tool, web VR based. Personal space. Now, this concept is important, and there's a number of reasons why. But again, this presentation just summarizes on the main point. So I'll just say that if the students have a space within the virtual world that is theirs, they have a stake, they have a piece of the pie, they will take ownership, and it will in turn affect their behaviors to the virtual world. If they're just visiting, and this is a problem with a lot of schools. This is why students don't, and most schools that I've worked at or visited, don't really care about the environment, don't care about the computer they get, whatever, because they have no stake or ownership within that environment. They're just visiting. They go there to do things. They go back to their house. So a personal space within a virtual environment that is their own to customize, to display their great achievements, to socialize, bring their friends over to their room, to have calendars that can begin to organize themselves. But this is important, partly for the ownership reasons, partly because for some students, they have no other space. Their home life is a horrible, horrible thing that they try to escape. And I've seen that more than I'd like. And they would welcome a space they could escape to. So this to me is part of this tapestry. Besides an environment where we're going to form the educational experience, a space for them to be able to display their success, to organize themselves, to be individuals as well as to socialize. Why? Because if not, this becomes a novelty, which is the problem with a lot of the virtual worlds right now, which is why they have absolutely no ability, no sticking power, like all VR and others, because there's no reason for folks to stick around. So we give a space they can call their own there. And the last thing is, of course, gamification, which I mentioned several times, and anyone who knows me knows that I'm a big fan because I've seen and used the power of gamification in the classroom now and seen just how it can affect behavior and what a change it makes to education. So this whole thing has a layer of gamification through an UI to make anything you do, from taking classes to interacting with others to even volunteer work, be part of a greater experience that gives you HP, gives you levels, experience, maybe opens up new areas for you to visit, gives you some kind of reward that you can use to get new clothes for your avatar. So there's a reward system involved. Okay? So in very general terms, because this idea is actually extremely complex, as you can tell, this is the tapestry we're going to work from. Okay, that's resing. There we go. So what happens once we have this platform, and which, by the way, the platform is going to take some work. I've always been very independent, and I've tried to put these things together, but it's going to take a number of collaborators to bring this together. Now, once you have a platform to introduce it to teachers and administrators who are overwhelmed with EdTech, so we have a single platform, they're going to come to a platform because the platform is going to provide them with many solutions with this one login, one place. That's going to give us penetration. In my experience with districts and administrators, what they're looking for is not to have 15 tools with 15 logins and 15 accounts they have to keep up with and pay. They want a one-stop shop, which is why the state here in North Carolina, for example, adopted a single LMS, the Canvas LMS, so all schools can use it, one tool to organize themselves. Well, this is going to be our tapestry. It's going to be a single tool, single login, but we're going to be offering a lot of solutions for the schools. This is how we get adoption happening. That adoption has to be incremental. We can't go 0 to 60 in 0 seconds. We have to show them with small tools, show them the huge scaling effect that the technology has. So to achieve this, we're gonna this is the roadmap. We're gonna be working from small to big, but even at the small level have great impact. And how do we do that? Our virtual world will first host, or this virtual world that I'm proposing, would first host the kinds of activities that a lot of schools don't have the funds to do themselves, but they want to do themselves. For example, after-school programs in robotics. Here in Wake County, through this NC State University, there are some schools that have the ability to have these robotics programs after schools, the kids, building robots. Some schools have the funds, some get grants, some have teachers that are very committed and do this. But those are drops in the hat. I mean, that's not equity. That is a few individual schools, individual classes that have the money or have the individuals or have a nearby school that does it for them. Well, I would propose all schools should have access to it. How do we do it? Using the platform that we're talking about here. In the virtual world, equity is a lot easier to obtain because digital mediums you can copy easily and make available to all. So, a robotics program. You sign on to our system. You have a robotics program. The kids can sign on with the avatar. It's going to have robotic components. You can simulate how to build robots, how to code robots, how to run them, and the cost is virtually nothing because you're doing it through a virtual platform. So that's one example. Coding. There's a lot of coding programs out there that, yes, you can do on a computer without a virtual environment. Within a virtual environment, though, you can visualize that change a lot better, or you can even cooperate with other schools in this activity. And there's a number of other STEM and STEAM related activities that are not usually feasible for every school because of the materials needed. You need a grant, you need individuals. We bring those in this environment. And maybe they come for the robotics, but they see that the coding is available, so they make a new club. Or they come for the esports program or whatever we put in there, but they stay for the limnology lake related activities that we have set up as another after school activity for the environmentally tilted folks. So one login, all these activities. So they begin to come to these activities and see the power and the ability that it has after school, which is a really easy sell. So now we go electives. Now we go into the school day. The electives are another easier sell than curriculum classes because they don't count towards the kinds of assessments that the school gets towards their performance. So electives are a lot easier to sell. So same concept. Forensics, marketing, these activities that can be used in electives or as electives. If we can get the sale there, because a lot of times elective teachers also teach curriculum courses, they can see the ability, they can learn the environment, and then it's easier to go to the next step, which is where we get serious, which is producing curriculum courses within the environment. And I'm talking about not activities. Well, first it would be activities to help, like for example, a virtual cell like in the Genome Island had, and other small simulations. But eventually, entire curriculums, beginning to end. All the content is within the world. All the assessment is within the world. A student should be able to do a whole course independently within the environment, and that's what curriculum is that I'm talking about. So this is the gradual introduction from small to little. Okay, here's resing. It's coming. Okay, so once we have that acceptance in the school at these levels, everything becomes a lot easier. Okay. Oh, this was a slide from much earlier. Oh, fantastic! My slides might not be in order. So this was from much earlier when I was trying to drive the point across that we needed to have space for the students within the world. So what does this look like for individuals? Actually, no, I think that was actually in the right place. I remember now. Yeah. We have to build an infrastructure that does not just address the learning component, which is important, but must address the individuals. We forget that our stakeholders are the students. Okay? So, and I mentioned this briefly earlier, is this ownership. There's a lot more to the school than the topics and the content. There is this idea of citizenship that we try to harbor in our students, and it is an important one that administrators recognize, and one's important for us as a culture and society. So if they have space within this environment, then they can begin to govern their own space. They have to begin to build community. They have to begin to collaborate, to make decisions together. They have to understand that they have a voice. And that these concepts then relate back to the real world as far as what their actions in the real world have consequences. They can get involved with the environment and affect change. So when they have space, now we're talking about small towns of students. And these small towns of students can begin to govern themselves and become citizens, even have their own stores, market to other students, make decisions as to what they want in their plaza or what activities they want to have available. So more than just an education of content of science and math, we begin to educate as far as how to be citizens, how to be a greater whole. Things that I think are sorely missed because of the constraints of the school and the kinds of things that we have to worry about, like people not stabbing each other and sometimes, and passing those standardized tests that are the end all be all. At least in this state, you have to get those as high as possible, or the school doesn't get funded. So we need to have more for the individuals in this world than simply how to get A's on tests. That's got to be a part of it, for many reasons. But it can't just be a focus on achieving grades, or you miss out. Especially since the virtual world can afford this type of education. So we build a personal infrastructure. All right, individuals who in schools often get left behind, fall through the cracks, that will not be a part of this environment. Okay, and how do we achieve that? The most powerful tool, and this comes out of NC State, that they had a presentation about this, on using machine learning to produce AI that is empathic and adaptive. We give them companions. These companions can take many shapes. My vision had it a little bit like a golden compass. They can choose whatever little critter they want to have as a companion, and it would originally be simply a like the paperclip back in the days of MS Word. Does anyone remember the paperclip helper in their old computers that would come up and say, "How can I help you?" with the eyes and the eyebrows? Maybe not. I don't know. But anyways, if nothing else, it would help new users not get lost in the environment. Which, if anyone here remembers the days of Second Life at first, it can be very overwhelming. So at first it will simply be someone that can tell you, oh, remember to go here, and this is how you do that, and this is how you do that. But through machine learning, it will note where the student or the person goes, how they spend their time, which assignments they struggle with the most, which classes they spend the most time on. And slowly through machine learning also know what pages to visit, what their interests are, begin to form a database of the person that they're with constantly, and in doing so can provide guidance and advice, tutoring. Tell them, look, you've tried this assignment 3 times, you're not getting it. Maybe you should see this person who's a tutor in this area, or this teacher who's got time. Or maybe it's the opposite. You're spending a lot of time on this course, even though you got it all right. You're looking to do more, and maybe try this club, or maybe try this activity that is related to this. In doing so, it automatically tailors the experience to meet shortcomings in the education of the student, as well as let them explore further in that which they show the most interest. It can also track other things, which is more controversial, but nonetheless important. Monitor chats for things like bullying, signs of depression, and then maybe alert a counselor or someone about that kid, because one thing schools need most of and have the least of are counselors. Students then don't have the emotional, moral support for things going on at home or at school, and then we get all kinds of cases of depression, drug use, and many other things. This platform, in my vision, would address that by not allowing it to get that far. By monitoring and popping up the red flag, so someone can contact parents, or someone, a specialist or professional, contact that student, or maybe just their friends, and check on them, but not lose them in this environment. Okay, so the AI companion, the skill tree. So a really important component of this is tracking not just progress, but see where the progress leads. Make the student understand that there is an end goal. It's not simply just doing things because we're telling them to do things. They can look on the skill tree and see, oh, I'm taking a lot of science courses, and I'm particularly enjoying science courses that have to do with entomology. So how would I be able to get a degree in entomology? What does that skill tree look like? Okay, so what would I need to take? What certificates would I need to get? What other courses are there available to me that I can take to help me in this path? So the skill trees, which is such a component of a lot of MMORPGs, is used here like a ledger of not just progress, but direction. Um, and then this will come in later as we talk about having companies like Microsoft and IBM and others bring certificate programs to this environment that students that have the aptitude for it can be recommended to take through the AI that is monitoring their interests and activities. So now students can begin to take certificate programs in areas that they are most interested in to help them advance their career early on and make them better candidates for the workforce in their certain areas. And that last thing is that space that I talked about, having a space to display achievements and pictures, etc. And I think I already mentioned that quite a bit. So there's a lot of support and infrastructure within this personal space available through the virtual environment world, which we can provide to the students. 1:30. I have a problem with being brief, so I will try to get through the rest of it within the next 30 minutes. Okay. All right. So what is the impact? So what if we bring this about? What am I looking to do? How could what would this look like as far as changing the paradigm? What would the paradigm be compared to the existing paradigm? The first thing that I want to make sure I emphasize when I said a whole curriculum with all the information there that a student could do independently is not the same as teachers go away. Teachers have to be a part of this. They're not replaceable through technology. Their role changes to a more powerful, effective role, but they need to be present. That human influence is absolutely vital. But what we're going to focus on are the relationships and one-to-one interactions over the babysitting and classroom management and stress and everything else that comes related with trying to put 35 individuals in a single classroom and being asked to differentiate for everyone at the same time, which if you've been in a classroom, you know what that looks like. And it's just not a feasible thing. So we're looking for disruption. If the current system is to not change, because I don't believe the current system is changeable, is to be replaced, we will disrupt it by creating a parallel system that teachers can choose. And then the problem that the current paradigm will have is when enough of them choose this over the other, then the infrastructure, the way they manage the classroom will change to accommodate the new system. So again, the problem with current efforts, which feel like throwing pebbles at a mountain, with every new presentation I hear, every new technology that comes out, it doesn't affect changes in classroom as a whole. So we have to bring this disruption about. We have to bring this entire system that runs parallel to the new system with zero work on the teacher's behalf, because to be honest, most teachers will not put work into this. And I spent months over the summer preparing these different technologies that I've used and techniques. But that is a tiny minority of teachers that will do this. This has to be ready out of the box. We make it ready. All they have to do is log in with minimal effort, and then they begin to come. So we set up our system, and then they choose to come to our system. We don't change theirs because I don't think that's going to happen. Okay? So, and I think that's the problem that we have. Right now we're so focused on changing the current system, and I think it's futile. I think we develop a parallel secondary system that they choose to come to. So, however well funded and documented, we've yet to make significant strides in this. And I know individuals like Peggy that have been at this for decades and decades, and they tell me the same thing. Things that are for the most part unchanged, and at least in this country. Other countries have had more success. So we're going to develop a parallel system that they can choose. So what does it look like in the classroom? Okay. So there's several fundamental changes that it makes in the classroom, and the first one is a blended independent environment. Some kids do not need us, teachers. I've met them all the time. They're super bright and capable, and all we do in the classroom is slow them down. All we do with having ninth graders of one age together and 10th graders of one age together, and having to have the course happen in this many class days and have this many hours of seat time, and we must cover the objectives in this order. All we're doing is slowing them down, boring them to pieces, and making them disengaged and detached from the content. All they need is for us to get out of their way. And there are many of them, and they end up not making it through school for disenchantment, their boredom, and then classroom management issues. So it is independent. And the kids that don't need our help, don't need our help. Let them just have at it. They can finish the course faster, move on to other things and greater things, and be the incredible people they are without needing us. So that's the first thing. If they don't need us, they don't need us. That's okay. We don't have to have a hand in every cookie jar. And that's hard for teachers to give up that power. And then blended. That means that the kids that do need us, or when they need us, when they're doing these activities independently and they get stuck, we come in. We come in for that kid, for that problem. Okay, so it is, now we are coaches. This is the very well documented blended environment where the kids are hybrid, sometime online, working independently, and then sometime face-to-face with the teacher. And I run this 80-20 a lot of times when I used to do when in the classroom. And I would almost never lecture to the whole class as one. I would help the kids individually, make those relationships, help them when they need the help, and once they're over it, they don't need it anymore. They keep going until they need you again. Give them a chance to try and fail. That of itself has a huge amount of power in the learning process. Let them struggle with it, but don't let them get frustrated. It's a fine line. So when you need to come in, and the AI comes in here saying, oh, hey, they've been at this for a long time. They're not getting through. Maybe you can get a red flags. Maybe you need to talk to this kid about this problem. They seem to be really struggling with it. So you can get those red flags if the kids don't come to you, because some kids won't. We can become decentralized. No longer do we have to have 4,000 or 5,000, 6,000 kids in a single building, which is nothing but trouble, in overcrowded classrooms. We can get away from that model of putting everyone in this big industry and then put them in decentralized, smaller settings that are neighborhood-based. Maybe, their churches have little spaces downstairs where they can congregate and have small meetings of 10, 20 kids locally with someone to kind of oversee them. Or even a parent hosts 4 or 5 friends, and then that's school, because everything's within the virtual environment. As long as they have the headset, they can attend school together. So decentralize. And I will tell you right now, most districts would welcome this with open arms, because the issues with busing the kids back and forth, not having enough buses breaking down, and then the issues with having so many kids together with the gangs and the drugs and everything else, and the teen pregnancies. We get away from that by decentralizing. No longer do we have these horrible events of shooters come into a building and have a target-rich environment. Decentralized. There is no need to have everyone in one space at one time when the learning can be done virtually. Plus, the smaller environment, I think, will allow for more one-to-one interactions. And then the analytics. The virtual environment provides for a level of data that is unparalleled. We can know how much time a kid spent at each activity, for how long, how many, not just what answers they got right or wrong at the end during a formative assessment. We can be gathering data dynamically on the fly and react dynamically. So that means much more powerful interactions, much quicker ability to interact with a kid during the most critical times. Right when they're really struggling with a topic, or they're really having a hard time getting that aha moment. So huge amount of data that can be monitored by parents, teachers, or administrators to keep track of every kid, so we don't get the situations like we do sometimes where we think a kid's getting it because they haven't asked any questions. They take a test, they bomb it. And can we go back and reteach that? A lot of times teachers don't. They have to keep moving because of the time requirements. So the analytics available, and there's a university in Austria, I can't remember the name of the professor, that did a lot of work with analytics and data gathering from Second Life, the program that would run parallel to Second Life when it was on, and gather information about students. But there's ways to do it, and that would be a part of this vision. That data is very, very important, and I'll make sure I mentioned it. Okay, so this will be another angle of it that I've considered and should be considered um, to make this viable. Which to me, I'm very pragmatic. That to me, it can't just be a vision. It needs to be able to come to be, and is that it must be able to sustain itself. Any system that relies that is from a private company or from a government that relies on monetary support from an outside source will invariably run into conflicts of interest with the parent entity. Definitely, if it's government funding the whole thing, as soon as policy changes, individual changes, then you're going to have issues. Maybe they want to change which um, which topics are important, which are the common, like we have here, the common core of objectives, or maybe they want to bank, they want to use that private data from the kids for something else, for especially if it's a private company, for marketing purposes. So no, it needs to be able to sustain itself because then it can get outside, hopefully get around conflicts of interest that other entities would have. So it must be fiscally independent eventually. Maybe it begins as a startup with funds and with grants, but eventually it must be able to run itself independent of other entities so it can hopefully remain free of those conflicts of interest. But how do we achieve that? Well, I'll go over some ideas of how I think we could achieve it. Um, but the goal remains the same. If we're going to change education, there has to be equity. And that's equity for some, equity for as many as we can. And in this case, I'm trying to make the bar be all you need is internet and this device. And device, I think, could be purchased through the same funds that are personally allocated through the state to students. So I think we could get it out to almost every student once we get the state to sign on to it. And then internet is something that other companies like Google are already trying to make available throughout every community. So this, I think, sets our bar where we need to be to provide the equity. And then it must remain free to students. That is a bottom line that just cannot shift. No microtransactions to get different topics. No license fee or startup fee. None of that. Okay. For every student that wants to have this educational space available to them, it's available. That's something that has to be kept at the forefront of the project, in my opinion. Okay, so to do that, we have it fund itself. And how do we do that? Well, the way you usually do that, you try to find ways to bring on the funds. One great thing about having a space with tons of people is companies are going to want to put ads. So ad space, billboards, that's fine. Let them advertise. Product replicas. The kids are going to be purchasing clothes and furniture, and these kids are going to get older, and they're going to want to buy it in the real world. Companies are going to want to be able to populate the world with their own product. So hopefully the kids will then, in the real world, purchase the same product. So virtual replicas of real-world items for a fee. Maybe the buildings they're in. Architecture firms can show off their designs by making digital copies or digital designs that can populate the towns these kids live in. Okay, so we find ways to have these private companies bring in funds to the world, knowing the fact that they have their own agenda with it, but it would bring in some money. And then educational allotment. In this state, North Carolina, I think $27.65, $2,675 is how much each student gets every year for education. When I worked at the charter school would get that amount. And from that amount, for every student per pupil, they would buy all the books, and then they would make all the expenses from that amount. So if a student is taking the majority of their coursework and instruction through this environment, we can definitely make the case for having some of that amount be allocated towards the purchase of the headset and then funding this place. But it wouldn't come out of the kid. It will come out of the taxes that pay the state for the education for everyone. Okay, so that's how I envision possibilities, and others can have other ideas, of course. This is just my idea for how we could do it, to have the world fund itself. So, changing the educational paradigm it's big. I mean, as you can realize, it's been in place for a long time, and of course, this idea might sound good, but how to bring it about, I don't know. But I do think it requires a big idea, and by that I mean that I don't think any smaller idea is going to make significant strides in that direction. And a lot of folks have had tons of ideas and apps and other things that have come about. But I look into most classrooms, I look into my kids' classrooms, I see textbooks, I see worksheets. And that's like today. This is what it looks like for most everyone. So I think short of this big idea, it's not going to happen. How feasible is it? Well, the technology is there. That's not an excuse. I spoke with the CEO of Adorable. They have the technology, the web VR. They do assessments. It's all there. The headsets that can do this are coming out now. It's all there. So that's not the issue. The pieces for the puzzle are there. What we lack is an entity that has the will to affect this, because it's not a money-making scheme. So a lot of private industries will be right out because of that. We need a space that can house the financial, educational, and technical needs to be able to do this. I personally think it might be an academic institution like UNC or NC State or other universities that come together using their expertise and funds to try to bring this about. MIT's done something a little bit similar to this in an 8-bit environment. So maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I've spoken, like I said, to IBM. Thinking about this, I thought about contacting Unreal, which Unreal makes video games, but that came to be a dead end. But it's going to take partners that believe in this idea and have the will to stick with it through what I'm sure will be a lot of design challenges and bringing in the funds for it. The Gates Foundation has spent literally in the billions of dollars trying to bring about change in education, funding all kinds of ideas. But even Bill Gates mentioned how frustrated he was about not being able to make a change to the grand paradigm that is in place. So funds and will is what's going to take to bring this about. So with about 10 minutes left to go, which is what I wanted to maybe spark some conversation. I want to say good luck. I know everyone here is here because they're interested in the topic, and I know a lot of the folks here have their own projects going on in their own fields, and I definitely don't want to make this sound like your efforts are not the very thing that's going to bring about change, because it will. We turn enough heads. So please don't make this presentation seem like I'm saying that other efforts don't matter. All the efforts matter because they're all pieces of the puzzle, and then those efforts can be more of the answers as to how to make this vision better. This is simply from my experiences and my limited time in doing this, what I see it to be like. But what I hope it does, the presentation does, is bring about the discussions about what would it take to make it bigger. What would you change in what I've prescribed? How would you do it? And then maybe think about, well, who do I know that might be able to bring about some of these pieces? Who can I speak with to bring this big idea to? As you see, there was no you didn't sign anything when you first came in here saying you're not going to take this idea and run away with it and make your own fortune with it. I welcome you to. Please, someone steal this idea and make it happen, because definitely it's not. To me, what's important is to bring this about in some kind of way. Whoever has the ability to do that, and I'm more than happy to support anyone that thinks can get there through with my time and my meager skills. So as always, I'm available for discussions, and I've helped other teachers in the past and will continue to do so in the future. I will continue to try to bring this about in some kind of way. In the meantime, I just wanted to say good luck to you in your own area of efforts, and I'm always available if anyone needs any help. So we have about 10 minutes. I'd welcome for you guys to shoot holes in this and spark discussion, because it's only going to help this idea get stronger, and come up with your own suggestions as to how to improve it, make it better, make it more feasible. Also, I didn't answer a single question, as I thought I might do once I got on the topic. So if anyone be so kind as to copy-paste any questions that were made, I will be more than happy to answer them. Edith, okay. I mean, I can put that together. My library of books is in my office. I don't have it with me, but there are several volumes that do nothing but summarize some of the power of gamification in virtual worlds, and some go back quite a bit. So that will take a little bit of time to get that put together. But I can definitely refer you to some of the authors that make reference. Some of the authors that I know are of that. That one's on gamification. Oh, thank you, Tiamat. Yeah, McGonagall definitely, the references quite a bit of it in her TED Talks. And then in virtual worlds, Power of Virtual Worlds, there's also different volumes. So I'll have to get it together for you, Edith, and send it to you. Dave, what kind of VR are you thinking of? Could you, I guess, what do you mean? Virtual world is what I was talking about. I was not talking about augmented reality that has its own flaws. I was talking about something not unlike where we are right now, except, viewable through goggles, so you're even more immersed. So it'd be a virtual world like this, like Second Life, which I tried to make Second Life work, but wasn't able to. Yes, Edith. On the bigger design, I have those references. But again, that used to be my focus is to develop some of that and find what I could, and then I realized that there was a lot of that already out there. My first slide was I don't know if it was or not. It was simply trying to say that I wanted to use a headset. The Oculus Rift, even the new standalone Oculus, yeah, it was an Oculus Rift, one of the older models, was saying that I definitely don't want a device that requires a desktop because that takes it out of the running for use in the classroom. Just most classrooms don't have the space or the money for the desktops that can run the Oculus Rift. So $200 device, standalone, all you do is charge it and use it. That's got to be the answer. It's got to be a mobile VR platform to change the paradigm, to have the most penetration. Good to see you, Beth. I remember Cloud Party. I was there. Yep. I liked Cloud Party a lot. I had a house at Cloud Party. But the problem with Cloud Party and Adorable and some of the others is that they're empty platforms. It can't be an empty platform where they expect everything to be built. It's got to be a platform that has everything built and ready to go, and then they come and have a reason to come. If they keep coming up with platforms that have nothing in there but a canvas, teachers will simply walk away. It's too complicated to build effective educational interactions. A teacher does not, and I would say I'm above average at those skills, and the most I could do would be something that has some information, some very, very simple interactions. It takes programmers. That's the bottom line. This is why I cannot do this myself. It takes a team, and it takes a lot of coding to build the kinds of interactions that you want to have the most effect and show off the power of virtual worlds. So as long as the model is have a space and teachers will come build in it, that model will fail. Stephen, I think the effort needs to come from an entity that is both does not seek profit as the primary reason to get involved and has enough heft to them to bring about funding, like a university, like a Duke or a UNC or NC State or a combination of them both, all of them, or Ball State, etc. So I think that's what needs to come from there. And then have the funding come through them, and then have private industry that gets involved but does not call the shots. Same thing for government. If the government calls the shots, the private industry calls the shots, I think it has a way to, it will twist the intent. Plus, once it takes off in academia, it could become its own entity, become its own corporation with support from these other groups. So, and then the funding that I spoke about, the funding, be able to fund itself. I do think the platform has potential beyond the students. I think the platform could then be used by corporations for gamification, which is really popular right now. And a lot of the jobs you do, like telecom and working on spreadsheets and anything else, could be worked in through that environment and be made more fun through gamification. You can enhance uh, productivity. You can track progress using the same tools. So I definitely think it has impact in higher education and in the work environment. So I think the tool could be pervasive throughout the layers of different interactions, both as a student, as a higher education, and in the workforce. Okay, Astrid, I'm reading through your comment. Bear with me. Right. So how do you get the support of existing educators? Many of the existing educators I know are exhausted. The amount that's being asked for them only increases every year. And the amount of pressure for them to succeed with very meager supplies and at a very low pay rate, it's only going up. So I think they will welcome the ability to have a tool that the kids can get on and get a lot of this education, and then they can just help them and coach them with a whole lot less work, because it is a huge amount of work to try to work with 35 kids at the same time in the same space. If they have a tool where they can be in that space, the teacher can even put on a headset and be with them in the environment or be outside the environment, which I've done before, both ways. Then a lot of the expositional component, a lot of the simulations happen in there, but then they can come out and teacher can help them after they receive the instruction, a lot like the flipped classroom. So I think it makes the work easier for them. And I think by introducing it first as an after-school club, so teachers can begin to see how it works, and then electives, and only certain activities instead of the whole classroom, you begin to show them how it works and sell them on it. And then hopefully you have more adoption over time. So that's why I think it's got to be a roadmap of slow integration, not here's a whole platform, we're going to replace you with it, because that wouldn't work. You're right, if they see that. But they're looking for answers. So it's not like we're trying to peddle this to someone that's not looking for it. They're looking for something to help them, because all educators, at least in this state, they leave in droves. I mean, after the second or third year of teaching, most teachers are gone. They're librarians or they're doing something unrelated, because it is tough work. The teachers that stay a lot of times, the older ones, are staying because they want the retirement and because they don't want to do anything else at that time. They're looking for get that pension, and they don't give much of a crap. They teach out of a notebook, and they use the same lesson plans they've been using for 20 years, and they don't want to change. And that is personal observation. A lot of great teachers in there too, doing a lot of really, really hard work for their kids, but these are the exceptions. I think in India it would have a great ability to impact, because all you need is that headset and somewhere to charge it. So I think it can definitely be used in a lot of countries that are very large and have a tougher time to get the infrastructure, cemetery, to provide the instruction. Australia has been doing instruction in virtual worlds for a long time, and the reason why is that they're a huge country that is really spread out. So instead of trying to get teachers and materials to all these schools that are spread out, you could just put everything in that virtual cloud space, get one of these devices in their hand, and everything is available. Access to teachers, access to materials, access to simulations at the highest level of quality, and offer that highest level of quality to everyone. Yeah, you're right, Edith. A lot of teachers are reluctant to integrate any level of technology. They're very distrustful of it. That's why it can't be a platform where they have to go in and build in a virtual environment. They won't even listen to that. It's got to be ready to go out of the box, and it's got to be something that has immediate impact on the students. And it does, and I've seen it. And I've seen teachers that don't use technology at all, like the Spanish teacher that I worked with. And I took her class to the Day of the Dead at the Smithsonian in Second Life, and the results were outstanding. She was blown away. And this is a teacher that's very much books and worksheets. But all the kids were going to the Smithsonian's second Day of the Dead experience, and they were immersed, and they were asking questions, and they were curious, and it was like nothing else. And these are middle school kids. So I definitely have seen and believe in the ability for the technology to sell itself. Astrid, I don't think so. I think what we do is we spread out the workforce more. I think more teachers get online and work with smaller groups of kids that need the most attention, while the kids that don't need as much attention can keep working independently. So we lower the amount of kids per teacher, but we keep the same number of teachers or more. Especially the kids that need the most attention can get one-to-one or one-to-two attention like they wouldn't be able to in a regular classroom. So I think we drop the teachers in the environment and spread them out and use them as needed. Maybe have them work with kids internationally if need be. So I think if anything else, it increases the effectiveness of the teacher. Thanks for coming, Letty. Thanks, Phelan. Right, right. So in countries like India, then all you would need is to charge the devices, and then you don't need any further infrastructure. To be honest, if the kid can't even make it to school, you ship him a device, as long as he can charge the device and put it on, you could have a teacher that is in Mumbai, some other major city, work with that kid and other kids as needed. So no teacher needs to be physically there. You can have the teachers in one location working with the kids all over. You can even have agreements with other countries to share teachers and share their resources within the virtual environment. The environment does not have any political boundaries. Right, Astrid. That means that if there's a professor in Germany who's renowned for his ability to teach math, and you have some students that are really interested in a particular type of math, and there's no one as qualified to work with those kids, through this platform, you could make that happen. You can meet those two. One of the things that I'll be most excited to look into is to tap into what I think is the largest, most unused resource at present, which is a huge number of individuals that are retiring, this aging workforce that we tend to discard and say, well, they're retired, now we have to support them like there's some kind of burden. But these individuals are 20, 30-year teachers and engineers and surgeons and veterans of wars. And these individuals are the most valuable resource we have. Their experience in the field, their real-world stories that they have. I think those individuals, that intellectual resource, exactly, can be harvested. And it can be harvested in this environment. We drop them in. We set up apprenticeship type relationships where an engineer of 40 years is retired now, who may be bored. If they want to work with the kids, and a lot of them are really excited to do that. We put them in a world with 3 or 4 kids who want to be engineers, and now you have relationships happen. You have an individual with the most amount of experience in that particular field work with the kids to help them realize what they want to be. I think that is, I didn't bring that up because I couldn't cover everything in this one presentation, but that to me is one of the most powerful and exciting parts of this idea. How to motivate them? So, Materi, if you had, I don't know if you have or not, any experience with gamification in the classroom, but I have many times, and it is the most powerful tool for getting kids that are not motivated in education to become motivated. When there's a game involved, there's a challenge involved, there's levels, there's points, there's activities, they see the feedback immediately. It has the most effect in changing attitudes towards education of any other tool I've ever come across. I mean, I'm talking about kids that are problem kids, that are violent, that have no plans for university, don't care about consequences, but you make it a game for them, and it is all of a sudden 100% focus, like nothing else. What you would see is a level of engagement and realization of potential that you cannot imagine. Because the bottom line, a lot of these kids, especially the ones that are discarded, have huge amounts of potential, more so than most of the other kids, if they're just given a reason to try. Yeah, you're right, Edith. I love to see that apprenticeship mentorship model working together with these folks in the industry. Yeah, Edith, it's a great tool. We all know it's a great tool, but we just got to find a way to bring it. Right, Tiamat. It's the fact that most teachers don't have the skills to build it. So this has to be an effort that is built by programmers, coders, educators, a team of individuals that invested to bring it together. Yeah, no, Second Life is not the platform. Samantha Ray, as you're mentioning it, I tried Second Life, and it's not the platform for the reasons you're mentioning it. It's too public. The platform that I'm suggesting would be a separate platform, just for this kind of purpose that we monitored. It would have to be. It would have to be. And parents would have to be involved. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, the space would be safe for kids, regardless of parents. The space that I'm proposing. This is not the space for it. For several reasons, Second Life, when I tried it, is not the space to do this. For one thing, it takes a client. It wouldn't be WebVR. So there's other reasons. But the space would have to be monitored for adult type things, and parents would have to be able to monitor their kids and their kids' progress, etc. So that would have to be a part of it. Yeah. In this culture, in every culture, some cultures are even more restrictive because of that. So the idea of communities that have a level of culture and standards that are set up based on their home region is important to note. And some cultures are more conservative and require a higher level of monitoring of that kind of thing. So, that we have to be sensitive to that, especially if it's a platform that's going to be global. Okay, it's 2:07. I am keeping all of you here kind of late. I am elated that this has sparked conversation, and I'm glad that some of you don't agree with me, because I know for sure that I am not capable of producing a perfect idea right out of the box. But what I am glad for is that you guys are thinking about it, the possibilities, and most importantly, I hope you're realizing that's going to take this level of idea, and that spreads until someone somewhere can make the right contacts and begin the foundation of that virtual environment that's going to eventually unseat the paradigm. So again, honored. Science Circle, thank you for having me here. Thank you, everyone, for the time. And I put out my email earlier. I put it out again. If there's anything I can do for anyone, I am available. There. Okay. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful day.